G'day everyone and welcome to Brushes with Beck. Today's video is just a quick little mixed media drawing that I did this week of a brown hare. This brown hare I photographed a few years ago. It wasn't a very good reference photo, but I thought I could make a little something out of it, and it gives me a chance to be a bit more looser and have a bit more of an experimental style rather than focusing too much on the nitty-gritty details. So for this piece, I'm working on Fabriano Artistico hot pressed watercolor paper. This is only an A5 piece, so it's quite small. And I'm using, to begin with, the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer watercolor pencils. I've just gone in with a warm grey 2 with those pencils, and I've sort of mapped in my lighter and darker areas with that warm grey. And I'm just using the water and the paintbrush over that now to blend it out before going in with some further layers of the Albrecht Durer watercolor pencils. Now, the great thing about combining watercolor pencils with colored pencils is the ability to create a nice rich base layer of color and then pop in details over the top. So you can see I'm using quite a variety of colors, a few different browns, a coral and some warm grey 5, and just sort of mapping in those lighter and darker areas. I'm not worrying about how messy I'm being. I'm not worrying about pencil strokes because all of that will blend out with the paintbrush once I add water. So mainly just focusing on where my light areas are, where my dark areas are, and trying to get those, the values accurate or relatively accurate in these underlayers. And as you can see, the colour changes quite drastically once I add the water, which is why it's so important to do a swatch chart for watercolour pencils. If you've watched my unboxing video, I think it's my unboxing video of these pencils, you'll see I did a swatch chart in that video where I have both the dry and the wet samples next to each other for comparison. Now, once I felt like I had enough of a base layer in with the watercolor pencils, I've then picked up my Derwent Drawing pencils. These are a wax-based pencil. They are good for filling large areas, not so good for fine detail. If you're interested in the differences between how these look compared to, say, the Faber-Castell Polychromos, in last week's video, I drew the exact same picture twice, once with Derwent Drawing pencils and once with Faber-Castell Polychromos to compare them, and you can see some of the differences there in how you are able to use them. Now, if you are liking this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and comment down below. Now, as I'm saying, just working through this piece, adding in different colours. I am going in with some darker browns there, chocolate that is, I believe, by the Derwent Drawing pencils. I'm not trying to be too detailed with this piece, but I was sort of struggling to find a balance between adding in detail and then suggesting detail, because I like sort of to have sometimes to do something that's a little bit looser and just focusing on the values and the colours and just implying some of that detail. But I find it a bit tricky to let go of all those fine details. So that's where I struggled to find a balance in this piece. And it went through a stage where I really didn't like it at all. I actually thought it was quite terrible and I wasn't sure whether I was actually going to upload this video. But by the time I got to the end of it, I liked it a bit better and I'm actually quite pleased with the result. Looking at it on a big computer screen, I don't think it looks quite as good because it is quite a small piece, but looking at it, sort of holding it out in front of me and looking at the piece itself, I actually really quite like it, and I think the values in those shadows have really sort of pulled it together. So, as I've said, focused on the Derwent Drawing pencils for these lower layers of coloured pencil, to add in, to block in some of the fur and sort of lay that colour in quickly because they do lay down colour very quickly. I've switched over to the Faber-Castell Polychromos coloured pencils for the eye because they are much easier to work with little fine details like that. You can get a fine point on them, and I'm just going in now and refining details and fur texture and trying to smooth things out a little bit with the Faber-Castell Polychromos. Just adding a few different colours, adding some more textures where I think it needs it, and just refining the piece as a whole. So like I said, partway through, I really didn't like how this was coming together, but in the end, I did quite like it. I added a shadow in front of the hair because in my reference photo, the light is coming from behind the hair and casting that shadow in front of it. And because his feet aren't touching the ground, the shadow is a little ways in front of him. And that's this piece for this video. I do hope you've enjoyed it. It's a very quick one this week, but you know, not everything is a huge work of art. I don't always have time to do that. So I also love doing these quick little studies where I am focusing a little bit on values, a little bit on color, and also trying to work out a balance between how much detail I need versus just implied detail. So I find quick little studies like this to be really, really valuable, and you can learn a lot from them without having to go into too much depth. So once again, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember to give it that thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, comment down below, and I will see you again next week for another video. Stay creative.